So I've just cleaned up the area here where I removed some of the hardware, and I just used my vacuum cleaner to do that. What I want to do now is get the guitar ready for the fret job that I'm going to give it. I'm going to give it a fret level, a recrown and a polish. But before we get into all that, we have to prepare the guitar for the job. And we have to, if you have a customer dropping off a guitar at your place and you have to go and set it up, then if that customer has any specs or requests to how you're going to set the guitar up, let's say the customer really likes the action on the guitar, then you have to go in and get and collect the measurements on this guitar. And as I said, this is a friend's guitar, so I'm just going to set this guitar up to factory specs because it's really not that big of a deal for him. So I'm just going to set it up to factory specs and maybe alter that in some way to some of my own specs. But if it's a customer or anyone with request for the setup adjustments itself, then listen to what the customer has to say, write it down, then go back to the instrument and collect the rest of the measurements and see if they're as the customer requested. It could be everything or anything from the neck relief itself, the action height, the nut slot depth. If you were to put in a new nut, for example, then you would have to go in and measure the overall height of the strings at the first fret here and write them down. The pickup height, tailpiece height, basically anything like that. And that would just make it easier for you when you have to go in and recreate the request that the customer or your friend had, for example. So that's one of the first things that I do before I even get into touching the frets. So basically just get out a piece of paper and a pen and just write those down. If you want, I could make you a checklist. Then you just have to put a comment in the comment section here and just let me know. I'll be happy to help you out with that. Before we can do the fretboard and the level of the frets here, we have to make sure that the fretboard itself is as straight as we can possibly get it. Because if we just went in and leveled the frets right now with the tension the fretboard had from when the strings were on, then when the strings are on and you adjust the truss rod and you get it somewhat flat or with a bit of relief, then what will happen when you take off the strings? Then that relief will basically just be put into a little bit of a back bow on the neck because you don't have the tension from the strings. So in order to make a accurate and professional fret level here, we have to make sure that the condition of the neck is as straight as we can get it. And for that I always use this notched straight edge right here, as you can see. And it has two sides on it. It has a side for Fender and Telecaster guitars, and it has a side for Les Paul's guitars. And you can basically get these straight edges in a couple of different measurements, so they would fit anything from acoustic guitars to basses or anything like that. And for this SG type guitar, I will have to use the side where it says 24.75 inch, and the other side for Fender Stratocasters and Telecasters would be 25.50. So I'm going to take this notched straight edge right here, and I'm going to place it right in the middle of the fretboard, somewhat. And sometimes it will stand on its own, and that's just fine, because then you will have more space to just go back a little and take a look at the fretboard and actually see where it's at. And this is quite funny, and this is what happens often when you've adjusted the truss rod with the strings on, set the relief with the strings on, and then you take the strings off. As I said, it would probably create a back bow, and it actually has, because when I place the straight edge on the fretboard here, I can actually rock it back and forth. Maybe you're able to hear that, I don't know, but it's actually rocking back and forth, meaning that I have some back bow in the neck, and I would have to loosen the truss rod to take that back bow out. So that's the very first thing that I'm going to do here. So I'm going to take my screwdriver again, and I'm just going to remove the truss rod cover up here, so I can adjust the truss rod. And when you go to adjust a truss rod, basically any truss rod, whether it's an acoustic truss rod on a bass guitar, or a basic electric guitar truss rod, then you have to place yourself at the end of the headstock up here. Insert the Allen key, or whatever key might fit your truss rod department up here, and you have to remember that righty is tighty and lefty is loosey. So that just means I have to get this back bow out by loosening the truss rod. So I have to turn it left. I have to turn it left up here. Now let's say on most acoustic guitars and on some vintage Fenders, Strats and Telecasters, they actually have the truss rod down here or in the sound hole. Then you wouldn't place yourself at the headstock looking down, because then you would reverse what you're doing. You would basically just, if that's the case, just place yourself at the bottom of the body here and insert your Allen key, and then it basically works just like it did on when you placed yourself at the top of the headstock. Just remember that, because if you forget it and you just keep yanking the truss rod, which you should never do, but then you could end up ruining the neck and the truss rod itself, and that would be a whole another story, which would not be pretty. So just remember that if the truss rod is up here at the headstock, place yourself at the end of the headstock. If it's down here at the end of the fretboard or in the sound hole of an acoustic guitar, place yourself down the body. And I'm just going to tell my Allen keys here and just take a look at how big the actual truss rod is in here. I'm just going to see if I can make it fit. Okay, so I can see that the Allen key that I need, I actually don't have in my little bundle over here, so I will have to go look for another one. So I'll just do that and then be back. Okay, so I found the correct Allen key up here, and I've just inserted it. I've zoomed in a little bit so you can actually see what's going on up here. So I'm just going to take my Allen key, just make sure that I make it fit, just like that. And as I said, I have to take out some of the back bow in this neck right now, so I have to turn it to the left to loosen it. So I'm going to do that. And that happened quite easily. And I'm just going to do a quarter, maximum half of a turn this time, and then I'm just going to give it a couple of seconds to take effect, and I'm going to take the straight edge again and I'm going to place it on the fretboard to actually see where I'm at. So right now, see that starting to look good. We still have a little bit of bow up here. I'm just going to take the Allen wrench again, because to going to insert it, I'm just going to turn the truss rod a little bit more to actually see what that will do. And often you don't need a lot. You don't have to do more than half a turn or a little bit more than that to actually get the truss rod and the neck straight. So that's just important when you go to do a truss rod adjustment. And many people are afraid of doing this, but it's actually a fairly simple adjustment to do, and I really think that you should be able to do this yourself, because basically just taking it to a shop will, at least if the person behind the counter in that shop is the same person who's going to set up your guitar, then no offense, but often the setup is just going to be a little bad, because you have to know what you're doing. And when you just go into a guitar shop and just say, hey, can you set up this guitar? Well, if you don't explain any further what you mean or what you have to get this guitar set up to, then they'll just give you a basic adjustment, which is just take a little look at the truss rod, adjust the action a little bit more, and basically change the strings, intonate it. That's just it. And well, that's fine, but often they won't take the proper time to actually let the instrument settle in before they do this, and that will basically just cause further problems for you as a player when you get home and think, oh, I've got a great instrument and it's set up too, so everything should just be fine. And oftentimes it all happens so quickly, and it just ends up making it a lot worse than it was before. So I just think that these adjustments should be made by the player itself, because it's actually a lot easier to do it yourself. So I'm just looking, and right now it actually looks quite good. Still have a little bit of back bow up here on the 3 first frets. So I'll just pause the video now and just let it settle for a little while and just see how it comes along. So I'll be back soon, guys. So the fretboard now is actually as straight as it's going to be, and basically what you'll find out when you work on different guitars, that some guitars will have a little easier getting the neck completely straight, and others will require a little more time. On this one, the truss rod is actually, or the truss rod nut is actually quite loose now, but I have to do this to make sure that I get it completely straight. And by placing the straight edge over the frets here, it's just going to make my job easier to see where I'm actually at and how level the board itself is. So what I will be able to do now is that I will take my my fret rocker, which is this little tool right here, with the 4 sides on it here, and I'm just basically going to place it over 3 frets at a time, checking for any rocking on the frets. And maybe I can just zoom in a little bit here for you so you can see what I'm actually talking about. So let's just say that I'm just going to take the some of the frets down here. Let's just say I'm going to take the last 3 frets down here on the neck with the pickups, and I'm just going to place the fret rocker somewhat evenly over the 3 frets, and then I'm just basically going to hold it kind of lightly and just see if I have any rocking here. And on this fret down here we actually have a bit of rocking. And when you're checking for high frets on the fretboard here, you're checking 3 frets at a time, so the middle fret will be the one that's rocking or the one that's high. So you just have to take that into consideration, and remember it's always 3 frets at a time you're checking. And let's just say if I was checking the if I was checking the 3 first frets, just going to zoom out here, actually just like that. If I was just going to check the first 3 frets up here, I would go in and check them, and when I proceed further down the neck, I would only move the fret rocker 1 fret down. So I've just checked frets 1 to 3. When I go along down the neck, I would move the fret rocker to fret 2 to 4. So you're checking 3 frets, but you're only moving the fret rocker down 1 fret at a time. And I'm going to do this on the fretboard here, and I'm just going to see how many frets on this guitar are actually high, and depending on how many frets that are high, I will determine if I need to do a complete fret level, or if I can get away with only doing some spot leveling, meaning that if I only have 3 to 4 frets that are actually really high, then I could basically just go in and level those out, and that would be it. But I would say that if I have more than 10 frets on this guitar, on this fretboard here, that are actually rocking, then I would consider going in and giving the whole fretboard with the frets a complete level, because that would just basically ensure later on that I know that the frets are level. So I'm basically just going to place the fret rocker over the first 3 frets here, and we actually have quite a bit of rocking up here. A little bit on the left ones there too, a little bit there, not so much there, a little bit more here. And what you'll see sometimes is that maybe the fret is rocking out here on the edge, but not in the middle, and or the other way around, and that's just because maybe the frets just haven't seated properly, or anything like that. But I actually have some high frets on this one, and basically what high frets will do to your guitar and your playing is basically just going to make it harder for you to play, because when you go to bend notes or generally just fret notes, those notes will tend to choke out or even buzz, because the frets are higher somewhere and some aren't. Okay, I have more than 10 frets that are high, and even if I had 10 frets where I only have a little bit of rocking, I would probably just take the worst ones and go in and level those. But I have some frets here that are actually rocking quite a bit, so I just want to make sure that I get everything nice and level and as good as can be. and therefore I'm going to give the whole fretboard with the frets a complete level. So basically that's it. In the next video I'm going to take you through the process of leveling the frets and what I do when I go in and level the frets here. So this was a little bit of information and some tips and some tricks that you can use yourself when you're, maybe if you're starting out doing some of these guitar works yourself, or just want to watch this for fun. So this will be it for now, and until next time, take care guys, I'm going to see you soon.